This is Creepy and Geeky, a part of the Morbidly Beautiful Podcast Network. Welcome to Creepy and Geeky. I'm your host, Robert, and on today's episode, we'll be talking about the first movie of Phase 4, Black Widow. Returning to the show for this episode is my daughter, Katrina. Welcome back to the show.
Hello, thank you.
Yeah. So it's fun to have you on, and today we're talking some MCU, the
hmm
first movie, like I said in Phase 4, the first movie of the multiverse saga.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but really, this is kind of an epilogue to, well, kind of. It's an epilogue to um, Black Widow's story, and the previous three phases. But it's also a prologue to stuff that's going to move forward as well. So, because we're introduced to some new characters that are going to be in a future movie as well. So,
hmm
um, so we're talking, like I said, about Black Widow, and this is, set between, like, after the events of Captain America: Civil War, and so Black Widow's on the run from Secretary Ross, and that's kind of where it starts. Well, that's not true.
Yeah.
The movie actually starts with a flashback to Natasha's early years, um, a brief moment where her and her family, quote unquote family, are living in Ohio, and we get to meet her little sister Yelena and her parents, who you find out later are Alexei and Melina, and they go on the run because they have been Russian sleeper cell family who were there to set like get some information, uh, and they go on the run and manage to
hmm
barely escape. But we do get some interesting family moments with them before they escape. It shows, that they're sort of a family, that the Yelena definitely as a little kid, she did she didn't really see it as anything other than being a family. But Natasha, you can tell
Yeah.
she knew, she was a little bit older and
Yeah.
just a bit wiser about it. So
hmm I
um
didn't realize that the actress who played young Yelena was the same actress who was in Megan.
oh, is she? I didn't know that. I didn't
Yeah.
realize that. So she's
Yeah,
the
young Yelena is the main girl in Megan, not
oh,
Megan, but the other girl.
that's cool. That's
Um
cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't realize that until I was rewatching it. I was like, what the heck?
That's very cool. I didn't catch that. That's funny. Yeah, no. So we got, David Harbour, who I'm a big fan of. Loved him on Stranger Things. He was on the Newsroom prior to that, and then of course he's been, he was Santa Claus in Violent Night, and he was in a favorite movie of mine, playing a favorite character of mine. He was in Hellboy. Um, so he was Hellboy. Unfortunately, that movie did not do well, and he will no longer ever be Hellboy, even though I thought he was excellent.
Yeah.
But no, I'm a big fan of his, and it was great to see him in this role where he plays a Russian version of Captain America. He plays the Red Guardian.
hmm
Um, and he's definitely got some form of a super soldier formula. He's stronger, faster, more agile, um, even older, as we find him later in current time, or just after Civil War current time. Um, I don't know. It's just fun to see David Harbour. I think he's excellent in pretty much everything he's ever done. So
hmm
but yeah,
Yeah.
no, this is after they escape and they land in Cuba, um they they're kind of separated as a family. Red Guardian goes off to do his thing, Melina goes off to do her thing, and the two girls are put back into the Red Room program, um which we learned a little bit about in previous movies. And but you learn a lot more in this one just about how
Hmm.
they've been um you learn a lot about the Red Room and how they kind of what they subject these girls to. And like,
Yeah.
they weren't just they were definitely weren't willing recruits. They were just taken from people and subjected to Natasha and previous groups were subjected to um, like brainwashing kind of conditioning. And then later on, um, Elena's group, and after they were subjected to chemical subjugation, as they put it.
Hmm.
So it's an interesting um, way to sh- show how this Red Room works and how both of these characters kind of came about, like the different generations of Black Widows and everything.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, you really wanted to talk about this one. So what was it that about this movie that really spoke to you and made you want to be on the show to talk about it?
I think like despite me liking other movies in Phase 4, this is the movie that I've like come back to the most for whatever reason. Um, I like really enjoyed it like first watch in the theater. Um, and it was very interesting to like see like I Black Widow was never a character that I really gave any thought about or consideration about. So this movie was very interesting. Because I always thought, like, for me, at least, Black Widow is more of like a side character. Like,
Right,
I consider like Barton like a side character, kind of along the main MCU Avengers,
right.
even though they're the main ones, you don't ever like really get to like know them
Well, because
that
they never got their
much.
movies. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And so like, so the Black Widow movie was very interesting to like kind of just see like who she is and like where she came from because you only really get a little bit in um like Civil War and like Winter Soldier, I think
Winter
she's in.
Soldier, you get a little bit of Red Room kind of backstory. It's very brief, but you get a little bit of it
Yeah.
in Age of Ultron as well.
Yeah.
So
So there's just, like it like you just it's just an interesting thing into Natasha. And I really like this movie because it started like my appreciation for Florence Pugh.
oh yeah.
Um
Well,
uh
like for me, like it began with Midsummer and
yeah.
then continued into
I
Black
didn't
Widow.
realize that the that her and Midsummer like that was the same actress until after the movie because I was like she looks familiar and you're like she's in Midsummer. I was like, "Oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like two complete
Oh
different
yeah.
characters. I love her character in this. The like you're such a poser, like whole
Yeah.
thing is like so funny. And she's just the writing that they did for Florence Pugh's character for Yelena is just so funny. Cause she is just like that little sister. Like
Yeah. No,
um
absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
but then also like I like the scenes in the movies are all pretty like well done. Um I don't know. It's just a fun movie to watch for me. I guess
Right.
I like movies that are about like girl power, things like that. So
Right.
this movie was very much like that kind of like banding together to help women and stuff. So it was fun. So
Yeah.
I'm glad I got to rewatch it again. Um, because it was just interesting to like see stuff for another time so that we could talk about it.
Right. Yeah, I liked the sister dynamic they had, even though they obviously hadn't seen each other for a very long time.
Mhm.
And probably since they were kids.
Yeah.
Um, that that they still, once they kind of got past a few things, they kind of dropped back into that kind of sisterly vibe. And
Yeah.
then the same thing with the family overall. They they it's a dysfunctional, fractured family, and very weird, but in the end they all came together to kind of support each other and to do what they
Hmm.
needed to do to take on the Red Room.
Yeah.
um and so I thought that was really cool, and I think that's what's nice about going forward is we all know that because this movie came out after Endgame, Natasha's dead. She's not coming back.
Yeah.
But we are getting Red Guardian, Melina, and Yelena all in the upcoming Thunderbolts movie. So that's really going to be a lot of fun. And apparently it was some of it, the like the original writing of it, the original story of it was a little more closer to kind of a continuation of that storyline. And
Hmm.
I'm assuming there'll still be that in the movie, but because the movie also features Bucky and U.S. Agent and Ghost and Taskmaster and stuff, that they'll kind of spread that out, spread the story a little bit more evenly, so it's not just Black Widow Part Two, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, so it'll be interesting. So, but yeah, I liked it. I liked it a lot. It was, I'm an easy mark, obviously, for the Marvel stuff, but there are a few movies that I'm just kind of like soft on. This is
Hmm.
not one of them. This is one of the ones I really enjoyed, and every time I watch it, I like it even more.
Yeah.
So it's one of those ones that continues to grow on me. Not that it ever wasn't great to begin with, but it continues to grow on me every time I watch it. I wouldn't say it's one of those ones that I go back to all that often, but
Yeah.
definitely when I do go back to it, I'm like, man, this is such a good movie.
Hmm.
Um, and it's nice to just see this. It's nice to see um Natasha getting her own movie, getting her own story. And I'm glad they finally did it, even if it was after she died. I wish they had managed to do it before in game, but it is what it
Yeah.
is, and I'm glad we got a little bit more with her. But yeah, no, I like that family dynamic. I like that it's weird and messy, because that's what families are like.
Hmm.
And but in the end, they all came together. Dreykov being the bad guy, and then kind of getting that backstory of what Natasha had to do to prove that she was no longer
Yeah.
Russian and everything like that, and prove that she was on the side of Shield and everything like that, was to kill Dreykov, and then the collateral damage of his daughter and everything just weighing on her like this whole time, and then finding
Yeah.
out the daughter was Dreykov, but has been like subjugated also, was just like crazy. Um,
Yeah. That scene at the end was really sad where the first thing that she says, like that Taskmaster says when she's like released from the chemical stuff is he gone? Like that was like,
yeah,
oof, that's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
But when you're being like abused and tortured and used in a way like that, that's
yeah,
yeah, that would be the first thing on my mind too.
yeah. Yeah, and I mean, and it sets the end of this sets up a lot of stuff. Like I said, it sets up some stuff that goes into that's going to be picked up in Thunderbolts probably, but also it sets up some storyline that gets picked up in the Hawkeye TV show. So, which I'll talk about when I talk about that show.
Hmm.
But it's they leave it with the widows that were on board the Red Room area, or whatever you want to call it. They were released from the chemical, but Um, so now Yelena and some of them are going to go find other widows that are out in the field because there's hundreds of them,
Hmm.
and try to go release them as well.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was a cool thing to do. And we do get a tiny bit of that with in the Hawkeye TV series. So
Yeah.
definitely, if you haven't seen that, watch that before before my episode that comes up with it. Um, but yeah, that part was interesting. The Taskmaster stuff was interesting as well because so this was kind of a bone I had to pick with the movie, and I've come around on it sort of. But Taskmaster in the comic books is a guy, and I don't have a problem with the gender switch on it at all. But the um the tying it to the widows and Dracov and everything like that is kind of like, I don't know, it takes some of the interesting aspects of the character out of that, because the character himself has this ability. I, I don't think it's ever been said that it's a superhuman ability, but he has like photographic reflexes. So whereas people who have a photographic memory, they can read whatever, or they can remember anything they saw or read or whatever.
Hmm.
Well, he can every remember and replicate every move he's seen.
Hmm.
So he can watch Spider-Man or um, Captain America or anybody and do the exact same thing. He can become an expert archer based on just watching footage of Hawkeye.
Hmm.
And so I found that to be a fascinating ability. Now he can't do anything superhuman. So things like that, a superhuman can do, he just can't do that.
Hmm.
So taking away, like they kind of did that where they were uploading things to her and she was watching those things. So
Yeah.
they kind of put that in there, and they did definitely did do that. It just was weird the way they did it. And like I said, I've come around on it. I think that it's fine now, but it just kind of was just like, okay, it's kind of a weird thing because in the comic books, Taskmaster is a guy who is basically an assassin. He's for hire. And so, he works for whoever hires him. Um, and he also has a school where he trains all the flunkies, all the mercenary minions of people like Hydra and AIM and all those people in the Marvel universe. So that's where
Hmm.
like he had this school for all that. So I thought that was a fun thing that they just, and I get it now in a world post Hydra and everything that, you know what's the use of that? But it was that was the disappointing part of it, just him not being a the character not being a mercenary for hire type thing, an assassin for hire. I get why they changed it, and that's fine. Um, and I'm interested in seeing where the character moves forward from here.
Yeah.
So, what did you think of the character?
I thought Taskmaster was interesting. I like when you first meet them, it's like on the bridge, I think, with Natasha, and they're just after the like
The
briefcase.
vials, yeah,
Yeah, the vials, and when they finally get it, it's empty. And I think that is like kind of funny, but it looks like Taskmaster just like gives up once they realize that Natasha has it and like is going there. But like that one part was like, I don't think Taskmaster would just like give up just because it's not in the thing because they know where Natasha went. It's just a matter of finding her.
right,
And Taskmaster's done it before, so why not just continue finding her? Because obviously Natasha's worn out. Um, so I don't know. It was
yeah,
a little weird that one part because I was just like I don't know. I understand story wise that they had to give Natasha a break, but
right,
I think
yeah,
realistically, if a thing like Taskmaster existed that was just like a killing machine, basically, they wouldn't like because Dreykov made her so that she would just keep going. So,
Right.
um, that was just one thing. But I like the character. Um, I think it was interesting the whole thing about replicating stuff. It adds a new element to like uh the world, I think, because that means
Right.
that like you you will meet your match kind of thing. Whereas the like Avengers are like usually these like unbeatable people, but Taskmaster is like all of them wrapped up into one if it's like utilized properly.
Right.
But um yeah, I thought it was interesting. I don't really have a lot like on Taskmaster because they weren't shown a lot in the movie. Um,
Right.
but it's definitely I definitely thought it was a guy though.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like that's the interesting thing was they definitely went out of their way to um show that or like to kind of put you off and make you not think that it was a woman the whole time.
Hmm.
That way at the end when it's revealed it's a woman, that it's kind of a shock, you know.
Yeah.
So, which
I
was
mean it
fine. Like,
worked. Yeah.
yeah. And it was fine because it was like it was a good reveal.
Hmm.
So, yeah, it was I again, I at first was kind of just like it was more like I was disappointed that we didn't get something a little closer to the original character, but then after subsequent watches, I've been like, okay, it's close enough. I still, it's still kind of like, man, I kind of miss the, because he's kind of he's kind of a jerk, and he's kind of
Yeah.
wisecracks a little bit, and he's more, and he's a thorn in their sides, anybody who goes up against him because he can nearly mimic every move, and
Hmm.
so it makes him really difficult to fight. So, I mean, and as long as we get more of that, then I'm good. So we'll see how how the character evolves in the Thunderbolts movie. Um, but what? Go ahead.
One thing about the movie that I liked was that like they talked about like Natasha's real mom and like
Yeah.
that whole thing where they said that she was relentless in trying to find Natasha and
Right.
get her back. And Natasha never knew. And then when she does find out that her mom was trying to find her, and then she finds out that the Red Room killed her and basically assassinated her mom. Like that's like I think that's one of the moments in the movie that like makes me more emotional because
Right.
it's like Natasha, like I think she's always like kind of had like a wall up because she doesn't think anybody's like ever like cared about her in that
Right.
way because like her like fake parents or whatever like abandoned her and the Red Room doesn't care about her. And even with the Avengers, she's like more of like a lone wolf type person, even
Well,
when she's
especially
with
like in
them.
the beginning, she's just like nobody's
Yeah.
around with her and everything like that. They've all
Yeah.
splintered so that they can all get away and everything. And
Hmm.
so, and then
Yeah.
obviously by the time, Avengers Infinity rolls around, they're all, kind of back together. But
Yeah.
yeah,
So just having that be like that was just like that was a tough like moment in the movie, I think. And
yeah, no,
then the whole scene with Dreykov where he's like she's buried in a random place with an unmarked grave.
yeah.
Like
Like
that's
you'll
just
never
like
know
that
where she's
yeah, you'll
at.
never
Yeah.
know where she's at. You'll never know who she is. Like that's so like that's terrible. So
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's, and that's what I think is interesting about the movie is that sometimes like, it's like the found family. Like she's
hmm.
like at the end, she's like, she reconciles. She's never going to see her mom. Whatever family she would have had, you know, she didn't have that. But by the end of this, she now realizes that she has two families. She's got the family with her, fake family who've now kind of reconciled, and then the Avengers,
Yeah.
who have become her family, um, more so than anybody else. And you can
Hmm.
even tell that that's in um, Endgame. after, the 5 years and everything like that, she's holding on as hard as she can to the Avengers. And, she's leading the Avengers at that point,
Yeah.
and so it's like, because she's just trying to hold on to that family. Um, and it hurts so much that so many of them are gone. And even her best friend is like vanished, so, being Clint. And so it's just, yeah, it's just kind of heartbreaking to go back and see, like, this point where she did kind of have, two families, but they were still kind of fractured and broken and everything. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it was a lot. Yeah, it's a kind of an emotional movie at times, definitely, just dealing with all that, especially, the two of them, Natasha and Yelena, kind of dealing with the fact that, you know, they, you know, Natasha put up those walls to survive. Um, and she it's even goes back to a comment that she made in the Winter Soldier, that Cap asks her, who do you want to be? Or like she says, who do you want me to be? And um he says a friend. And but she says that pretending to be different people is a good way to survive.
Yeah.
And so, being whoever she needs to be is, in whatever particular moment, is a good way to survive.
Hmm.
And um and so it's just, it's hard for her. So she put up all those walls and everything. And Yelena, meanwhile, she didn't realize, because she was under the chemical subjugation for a long time.
Hmm.
And so, once she's released from that, she starts, she sends the vials to Natasha, not really realizing Natasha's going to come and, eventually find her. But once they've come together and they go back to find Alexei and Melina and everything, then that family comes together. Elena says, it was real to me. No matter
Yeah.
how fake it was still real to me, because she was so young when it happened, when they were together, and they were only there for a few months, but it was just enough to make it real for her.
Yeah.
And then you have that moment too where Natasha finds Melina's uh, uh, photo album of them with all the fake pictures that they took, like over the
Yeah.
course of like a day, where they did all the
Yeah.
holidays and everything. But you couldn't tell by looking at those pictures that those were all just done in one day. It just seemed like, over the course of a year or whatever, that they did it all. And she obviously kept that book because she was sentimental, at least a little bit, for that as well. um Whereas Alexei, he kind of moved on. He's just
Yeah.
living in his, but you can tell, though, over the course of the movie, he tries to make amends with them. He doesn't do a good job at it.
Yeah.
But he is trying to make amends, and he realizes that, that he wasn't great, and that they needed a father he, and he's the best they have,
Yeah.
so I did find it a lot of fun in that, as messed up and messy as it is, they still kind of found each other and still became a family again, after all that time. So, but yeah, no, I think
Yeah.
that that's what makes it really fun, in so many ways. Just, it's a fun action flick. It's a fun um thing. And definitely the standouts are Yelena and Red Guardian for me. They
Hmm.
just they
Yeah.
it's definitely Natasha's story, but they come in so strong with their characters. And Melina's great too. But Yelena, Florence Pugh's Yelena is just so great, and she gets to continue the character again in the Hawkeye series, and it's just, she's so much fun.
Yeah.
In
They
both of
do a great
these.
job at creating her character.
Oh yeah, yeah, 100%. She's
And she
so
does a and she does a great job at like making the character who she is just by being who she is too. So
yeah,
I you were you were talking about how like Alexi kind of like grows over the course of the movie. And
Yeah.
there was a moment at the end that I was like, oh, because he like when they're all kind of like grouping up at the end after everything's said and done, Natasha's like, you gonna say anything? And then he says, I'll just mess it up. Like
Yeah.
I would just mess it up. Like that shows like that he cares and
Yeah.
that he like he had like he's coming from a good place, but he doesn't always say the right thing. And so I think that shows that he, I don't know, has grown a little bit more than just like from when they first had him in the helicopter and he's just like saying whatever and they're not caring. So he's just like, I'll just have the moment. And
Yeah.
I think it's good.
No, it definitely shows growth. He's like, look, I'm just gonna mess it up, so I'm not gonna say anything, but here's my hand
Hmm.
to hold, and and it's a good moment too because he understands that he's not quite there, but he's grown enough to realize sometimes they don't need to say anything.
Yeah.
So it's and again that just speaks to David Harbour being such a great actor too. Is that it's just he's so funny, and so awful at the same time.
Yeah.
So, but he's living in this glory days of being the Red Guardian who supposedly fought Captain America. And so this is what's interesting too, because they even mentioned it. Captain America was frozen in the ice. That was whoever he fought wasn't the real Captain America.
Yeah.
If he indeed fought somebody, because he does mention it to Natasha. He's talking to her and he's like, does Captain America, does he ever mention me, in our
Yeah.
great battles and everything? And she's like, who? And he's like, Captain America. And so there's this interesting history in the comic books too of Captain America. Once he'd gone into the ice, the government actually put out, like, it had kind of hired on a couple of guys, to pretend to be Captain America, so that there was a continuation of him, and so that
Uh,
the American people wouldn't know that he was gone.
yeah.
So it was, and it happened at least a couple of times. So there was like a Captain America that existed in the 50s, um that because he went into the ice at the end of World War II, and then
Hmm.
in the comic books was unfrozen around, I think, 63 or 64. So it's only like 20 years. And so with so in the comic books there was a Captain America. Captain America continued as a character in the comic books. um but it, like, at the time they said it was him, of course, because they're just continuing his adventures.
Yeah.
But later on they retroactively made it a different person who took on the identity, and actually had, like, taken, like, they had, like, not brainwashed him, but it implanted like new memories to make him think he was Steve. um
So weird.
yeah, no, comic books are bizarre and so dumb at times and everything like that. But it makes for an interesting history, and kind of makes for an interesting, like, that's the kind of thing that when they do that in the movies, where for the comic book fans, the people who've read that kind of stuff are like, oh yeah, that's what they're alluding to, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and so I thought that was a fun bit. There's also a couple of other comic book allusions to different Russian comic book characters that were part of a team with Red Guardian. They're the guy whose arm he breaks, who questions him about fighting Captain America in the 80s. He calls him Ursa, which is bear in Russian, and he that is a character in the comic books. It's a guy who turns into a bear, called Ursa Major. And then later on, when Yelena and Alexei are talking, she calls him Crimson Dynamo, and then he's like, "No, it's Red Guardian." Crimson Dynamo is actually a character also, like an Iron Man like guy in a armor. So it was interesting to kind of name check those two characters, even though we didn't get to see them.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's
It's
a
for the comic book fans.
yeah, exactly. It's those little comic book Easter eggs that are always fun to, for people like me who've read a ton of stuff and pick up on a lot of that stuff. So it's like, oh, hey, that thing, So us comic book nerds love that stuff. So, but yeah, no, it's that all of that, is so it makes it just a lot of fun. It's great seeing other Black Widows in this movie as well. Getting to see the Red Room, getting to see all this, the kind of some of the story behind it. Even it being as sinister as it is, and horrible as it is. It's great to kind of see that and kind of connect Natasha's backstory a
Yeah.
lot more. So and that's why I think is great, um, even though we it took until after Endgame for us to finally get a Black Widow movie. I'm glad that we finally did. She should have definitely gotten it earlier on, but for whatever reason, it just took a while. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm glad we finally got it, and unfortunately, it came out right around the time COVID started happening, so it didn't do well in the theaters, didn't make a lot of money like it should have.
Yeah,
Um,
it happened it came out like um the summer after.
yeah, 2021. So it was like
Yeah,
the
it
next
came out
year. Yeah.
yeah, it came out that summer.
Yeah. So it came out, summer of 2021. So it was like, already a year in, but so it just still wasn't like,
Yeah,
people
people were
still,
getting vaccinations, but
yeah,
movie theaters were still like, I mean, I can
yeah,
say from experience that movie theaters were still following like social distancing and like a bunch of other like COVID-19 like safety things.
right.
So
Because that
even
was
if
slightly
like,
just after you had started working at the movie theater.
yeah.
So
So at that point, like a lot of people still weren't coming to the movies. And
yeah,
I mean, Black Widow was the movie that came out on digital, and that's why Scarlett
that's true. Yeah.
Johansson did that whole lawsuit was
Yeah.
because she wasn't getting anything because it went out to
Yeah.
wherever it went. I think Disney
Well,
Plus.
it was
So
Disney Plus where you could buy it on Disney Plus and and get it early like that. So, they didn't put it out for streaming for free, not for free anyway, but like, for the regular customers, you had to actually pay an additional $20 to be able to watch it. And
yeah,
so yeah, because of that, there were a lot of people who didn't go, and like we said, because of it was still, you know theaters were still just having a hard time getting people to come in, that and rightfully so, that everybody's still being pretty cautious, but it just didn't do well, and yeah, she sued because they kind of tried to stiff her on that, because they did make some money selling it through Disney Plus like they did.
yeah,
But she wasn't seeing any of that money. And she was like, nah, because she was supposed to make a percentage of um ticket sales.
yeah,
And so she was getting a back end deal. Um, where she should have made quite a bit of money. And because of all that, she kind of got screwed. And she's like, this wasn't part of the agreement. And so she sued. It became a whole legal nightmare issue for them. And it's probably likely why we'll never see her in an MCU property ever again. So, unless they and I'm not sure if that was anything to do with the MCU or if it was Disney or what. So who knows what
yeah.
the actual situation is. I'm sure that somebody knows. But yeah, so it made it difficult for sure. But but I'm glad that it eventually, I guess, they settled it and figured something out, and she got her money, and
Hmm.
rightfully so. Because and this is the kind of thing that ended up leading to the most recent strikes that we had, because actors and writers were not getting the due that they needed to get for streaming stuff.
Yeah.
And so, because they were fudging the numbers or not revealing numbers, and were kind of screwing people out of the stuff. So, I'm glad that it finally got resolved in a good way. So, But yeah, it's but that none of that distracts from the movie. It's a great movie. It's very fun. Like I said, it gets better every time I watch it. So,
Yep.
but yeah, I don't think I have much else to say about it. Um, just that it was a lot of fun, and I wish that I'm glad to see that the characters, even if it's not Natasha, I'm glad to see that the rest of the characters are continuing on and getting to kind of, play with that family
Yeah,
aspect, hopefully a little bit more. So, um,
for sure.
sorry, I was looking at something.
It's okay.
Okay, so apparently the teasing that Yelena gives um, Natasha about her posing and
Hmm.
everything, apparently that happened during filming. Florence Pugh was teasing Scarlett Johansson about it during filming, and so one of the writers, put it into the film. So
That's so funny.
yeah, that just feels like something that would happen too. So it's great that something Florence Pugh did, like, then became something that the characters did. So
Yeah.
uh, interesting. Um, it, it's just I don't know. It's
It's a fun movie.
yeah, it's just a fun movie. Um,
Like, a lot of people don't like Scarlett Johansson's character, so a lot of people skip this movie just for that anyways. Um,
which I think is a
but
mistake. I think Natasha is an interesting character, and you get to see different facets of her, different interpretations of her, in every movie.
mhm.
Personally, I like the version that's in Winter Soldier the best. But this is a very close second in this one. Um, so and not
Yeah.
that there's different versions, they're all the same character, just different writers, different directors putting different emphasis on her. But I think this movie and Winter Soldier give her the best chances at being a character. Because she's not in some of the other movies, she's just not as big of a character. It's a bit much bigger ensemble, and she
Hmm.
doesn't get to shine as much. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I think overall she's great. She was a great addition to the overall uh, MCU. And personally, I'll miss her being around. She was a fun character for the whole thing. So, but
Yeah.
like I said, I'm glad we get Yelena and all of them popping up a little bit more here, and it'll be fun to see where Thunderbolts takes us from there. All right. Do you have anything else that you want to say about it that we didn't already mention?
I do not.
Okay. Well, why don't you let people know where they can find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at RCKMNKY, and I have a pinned tweet there that has all the rest of my socials.
Right. Um, that's about it for me. And I appreciate you coming on. You're going to be coming on for the very next episode, also, when we're
Yes.
going to be talking about Shang-Chi.
Shang-Chi. Woo.
Chi. So that's that. Stay tuned for all of that, everybody. It'll be another lot of fun movie. That made no sense with those words together, but that's okay.
It's okay. It's late.
It's late, but yeah, no, it'll be a fun episode. So everybody, come back next week, and we'll be talking about Shang-Chi. Thanks again to Katrina for joining me. On Friday, Katrina is back to talk about Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. And on Monday, Amber Knapp returns to the show with Phantom of the Mall, Eric's Revenge, and Chopping Mall. Thanks for listening. Creepy and Geeky is a part of the Morbidly Beautiful podcast network. Please check out morbidlybeautiful.com/podcasts for more great shows. If you like what you've heard, please consider giving the show 5 stars and a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Also, please share the podcast on social media to help spread the word. Make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app or at creepyandgeeky.com. Music for the podcast is Gratitude, composed by Harper Smith. You can follow the podcast on social media at Creepy and Geeky on both Twitter and Instagram. If you'd like to follow me, I'm Geek Thulu on Twitter and geek.thulu on Instagram. You can support the podcast by ordering teas and more on TeePublic or by donating to the Coffee page. All of the links are in the show notes. Finally, don't forget, stay creepy.